Hi, I'm Mark. I have a cooking show where I have an oven in my car and little to no experience in baking. We now have a sailboat, so we're going to take the show to the high seas. Join me as I bake on my boat. Welcome to the very first episode of Baked on My Boat. If you're new to the channel, I normally make videos where I travel to remote places in my car, exploring and baking things along the way. My adventures usually look a little something like this. I use a 12-volt electric oven and power it using a solar array on the roof. If this sounds like your jam, feel free to check out some of my other videos. My family and I have always loved sailing, and I've spent a lot of time as a kid on boats. There's me as a toddler. For the past few years, we've been off the water, spending our weekends camping and four-wheel driving, and we've found there's a lot of similarities between the hobbies. It's all about the adventure, getting to remote places, and being self-sufficient. Now, after a few years off the water, we have a new project. Meet Sunshine Forever, a 2002 Beneteau Oceanis 473 clipper. She started her life in Singapore and has sailed all the way to where we find her now in Sydney, Australia. In today's episode, we're going to be refitting her with new solar panels so we can stay off the grid for longer. Now let's get started. The boat already has solar panels on it, but they've been on there for about 10 years, and after this much time in the elements, they weren't quite working as well as they used to. So we're taking them off. These were two 100-watt panels running into a PWM controller. If we were lucky, we'd see about 4 or 5 amps on a really sunny day. In the spirit of minimizing waste, we carefully took them off the boat and then put them up for free. So hopefully they're being put to use in somebody else's off-grid project. And now we've removed the panels, it's time to cut off the frame. We're cutting off the stainless steel frame that the panels sat in, as they won't work for our new setup. Behind the reciprocating saw is my dad Kelly. After that was done, we filed down all the edges and took away the metal framework. Now on to the next step. On the port side of the boat, we had a radar tower which wasn't being used and prevented us from putting panels the entire way across the arch. If in future we go to reinstall the radar, we'll place it up the mast. One thing we've learned about working on the boat is that getting rid of the things that you've just removed is a little less convenient than when you're working on a car. But with a bit of teamwork and effort, we've managed to get the radar tower into the tender and back to the shore. And here's our trusty tender. It may have looks that only a mother could love, but at least you know it's always going to be there because nobody would want to steal it. After all that hard work, we decided that we'd reward ourselves with a day out sailing. Fast forward to the next weekend, and it's time to do the wiring. Because we're expecting to be running higher amps and voltage, we're upgrading all of the wiring going to the solar arch and to the shiny new panels. This means lots of time climbing in and out of the lazarette. We're going to be running 2 parallel lines of figure 8 cable so that we can run 2 36-volt feeds from the 4 panels. This should give us more amps earlier in the day when you need it the most. And to make sure nothing can get snagged or shorted out, we're protecting the entire run with loom tube. This is a time-consuming process, but it's definitely worth it. I lost count of how many times I climbed into this locker while we were filming this video. But it's all worth it knowing that the wiring was done and it's all out of the way. Now that all the cables are run, we're going to be installing a PV isolator switch from the feed from the panels. This means that if anything goes wrong, we'll be able to shut off the feed from the solar panels before it gets anywhere near the regulator or inside the boat. To mount up the solar panels, we're going to be using aluminium mounting rails like you would use on a house. The panels just mount using T-bolts, which means we can change them out whenever we want. This was pretty time consuming because we had to measure everything perfectly before we drilled the holes for the U-bolts. Here you can see the bolts that we used to mount the panels. Now the exciting part here is unboxing our brand new solar panels. These ones came off eBay and they're rated at 350 watts at 18 volts, and we have 4 of them. We're looking forward to seeing whether they actually match the specs and whether they can hold up to the salty conditions. In a few months, we'll do an episode updating you all on how they're going. And now for the exciting part. Mounting up the panels was quite easy because we had the aluminium rails there. The only thing that was a bit scary was trying not to drop them in the water. It was incredibly satisfying to watch the last panel go up and fit with a centimetre to spare, almost like we planned it. The next step was to secure it all down using the T-bolts. Now, I may be a bit biased, but I reckon they look pretty snazzy. Now it's time to sort out the wiring on the inside of the boat. As I mentioned before, we're running 2 36-volt feeds of heavy gauge cable into the cabin. These cables then go to a junction box and into a Victron Smart Solar MPPT 150. This can handle up to 100 volts of input and output 50 amps of charge, which should be enough for what we're doing. Now it's time to connect up all the panels using waterproof MC4 connectors. We can monitor everything using the Victron app, but to get a proper idea of how the panels perform, it's going to take a few weeks and a bit of real-world use. Stay tuned for an update. And here's the final result from above. And there you have it. Shiny new solar panels installed on our boat. Thank you for watching Baked on My Boat. Make sure to like and subscribe and to follow us on Instagram at Baked in My Car or Baked on My Boat.